Are you ready to begin?
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Welcome, David. Welcome, Noah. I see a couple more people just joined.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. I will get underway. Thanks for waiting while we dealt with some technical issues. So hello, and thank you for joining us today for the next installment of the Manufacturers Efficiency Group webinar series. My name is Matt Wizeman, and I am a certified business leadership coach with Focal Point. Today, my presentation is going to focus on those key practices that companies can use to drive successful change management within their organizations. So, all businesses must change and evolve to remain relevant within their respective industries. Some companies do that really well and do it proactively before change is upon them. Others change in response to external drivers, loss of competitiveness in their industries, loss of customers, and hopefully for those companies, they can um, uh, efficiently and effectively roll out their change before significant damage is done, before they've lost their place in the market or lost a significant amount of their customers. Regardless of the reason for change, statistics show that change management efforts typically are not successful. The majority of them never are driven to completion or end up failing altogether. So how do we avoid that? And that's some of what we'll cover here in this webinar today. There's some really famous examples of failed change efforts. Blockbuster Video possibly being one of the most famous. First, in their inability to recognize that external competitors were moving into their space, and second, in their inability to change once it was quite clear that those competitors, specifically Netflix, were going to dramatically impact their place as the leader in their market. But there's an even greater lesson here in the Blockbuster Netflix story, and that is that not only was Netflix able to come in, unseat the incumbent, if you will, and take over, Netflix has remained competitive in the market by continuing to evolve and rewrite their own playbook. Obviously they started out as a DVD mailing service, but then they evolved into a video streaming service and evolved again into a company that produces and streams its own content. So how do they do this? How are they so effective at, repeatedly, like I said, rewriting their own playbook to remain competitive in their market? And this webinar is going to give a peek into some of those key practices. So transformational change is certainly not easy, and it's never a small undertaking. It's never a small project or even just a series of tasks. It is a journey, and like with many big undertakings and journeys, a lot of times the hardest part is getting started and overcoming those initial roadblocks and getting past those first hurdles to get things moving. And this relationship between overcoming those roadblocks, overcoming resistance, and the things that companies need to do in order to overcome the resistance and move forward was illustrated by David Gleicher when he developed Gleicher's formula for change. In Gleicher's formula for change, the resistance to change, represented by R, is overcome by or can't be overcome until the variables on the left-hand side of the equation are greater than that resistance. So you do that by first painting a picture of a better future state, right? What is the company going to look like after this change is completed, and how is that going to be better for everybody? So that's represented by the variable V. Conversely, you need to also illustrate and bring to light the dissatisfaction, the pain points with the current state. What are those things that are causing people pain in their jobs and their daily lives within the organization? So those two things combined with variable F, first steps, how do we get started? What are the first things we need to do to get this ball rolling so that we can start to enact change? So when those three variables are bigger than the variable R, that's when change starts to take place. So how do you do that? What are those practices that need to be leveraged in order for, again, the variables on the left-hand side to be greater than the variable on the right-hand side, resistance? So first is leadership support. Not all transformational change efforts have to be driven by at the top, from the top of the organization. Not all of them have to be run by the CEO or the president. A lot of times they are driven by people lower down in the organization, department leads, or we'll talk about in a little bit. We'll talk about having a change management team that is running the change effort. Examples would be the head of production leading a big 5S transformation on the production floor, or the IT group rolling out a new application throughout the organization. Those can be big changes, big change management type endeavors within an organization. But again, they're not being necessarily led by the senior leadership. However, regardless of who is leading that change, senior leadership needs to be bought in, and they need to be very visible in their support of the change. It's not enough for them to just get status of the change management effort at senior leadership meetings, or just to check in once in a while. They need to be out there in front of the company expressing their support at company all hands meetings, talking about it, or giving time in the meeting for the people leading the change to give status, giving some real estate in the company, the monthly newsletter for the change team to again to update the company about what's going on within the change. That shows that leadership is behind it. And when this happens, when the CEO, the president, the owners, etc., express their support and show that they are monitoring what's going on, it lends credibility to the effort. And the employees and staff, when they see this, they're going to recognize that. They're going to say, "Oh, the boss is tracking this. Wow, we better treat this seriously, and we need to be involved. We need to support it." So leadership support is one key practice that is required for successful change management. Next would be employee involvement. So yes, all change management efforts need to have a core team that's leading it. However, they're not the only ones who should be involved. The people who are going to be impacted by the change need to be involved as well. Getting their input, helping them or asking them to provide, ideas about how to drive improvement. When I was part of a manufacturing team years ago, we were rolling out a really big change management effort, multi-year change management effort on the production floor. And while it was obvious to the change team what changes needed to be enabled and acted, and we could have just kind of dictated it out to the production team, we instead engaged with all of the employees within the production group. For example, we put whiteboards out on the production floor and told the production technicians, "Hey, anything that gets in your way of doing your job, be it lack of documentation or issues with parts, anything that slows down the process of getting product out the door, pause, go to the whiteboard, write it down, so that we can see exactly what's going on the floor for you, what's impacting your job day to day, And then we get together with those folks every week or two, and we would review what they wrote down and ask for their input. And so by doing this, we've engaged them in the process. And that gets their buy-in, and it also provides a sense of ownership, right? They're providing input, they're contributing to the change, and now they feel like they're a part of it. Another one is, kind of similarly related is, with them, what's in it for me? So not only, the support needed from leadership, but you've got to get support from staff and associates as well. Again, not having that can really impede the ability to drive change throughout the organization. So the change management team needs to be able to address the who, what, when, where, and why for each and every employee who's going to be impacted by the change. And again, we go back to Gleischer's formula and leveraging, the dissatisfaction and the vision, right? So, you talk about the dissatisfaction and vision for the organization overall. Well, what are the specific points of dissatisfaction? What are the specific pain points for each individual in their job and what they do day to day that are going to be addressed by the change effort? What is the vision for that specific employee of a better future state? What is going to be improved for them so that, they are once again excited about coming into work every day, and they're not thinking about, oh man, it's so hard to get task X done because of these issues. How that's going to be addressed through the change effort is really key to getting employee level, staff and associate level buy-in to what's going on. And so, once you've got that leadership buy-in, you've got buy-in from the staff and the associates. Again, you are really building significant momentum for the change effort. Next is tracking your progress. So you can't improve upon that which you do not measure. So pick some relevant KPIs for the change effort. If, for example, let's say you're doing a change management program on your on supply chain, perhaps a good metric is monitoring on-time delivery and showing how the change effort is improving on-time delivery as the change process moves along. How is that metric going up? Change management efforts should be treated like a project and run like a project. So perhaps using some traditional project management metrics like schedule variance, cost variance are good KPIs to leverage to show how the change effort is working. Be very public about sharing those KPIs. Put them up on cork boards in the facility, or have them on a screen in the cafeteria to show, hey, here's how things are progressing along. One thing I do want to note is allow the changes you are implementing, the lower level changes that are associated with the overall change effort, allow the changes to settle in before you respond. So, when you first roll out a lower level change, let's say a process change on the production floor, give the employees time to adapt, a time to, get up to speed with that new process. Before you really look at the KPI you're tracking and making a decision. A friend of mine told me, going back a few years, about a change effort being rolled out on their production floor, where this exact situation had come to light. The change team would implement a process change, look at the KPI, and revert back to the original process. Why? Because they weren't allowing the technicians, the people impacted by the change, to settle in and come up to speed on that new process. So they just kept, abandoning the changes and reverting back to the original process. Give the changes time to settle in, and then look at your KPIs and then say, okay, this new process, it's making an improvement, or maybe it didn't. What are we going to change? How are we going to tweak it? Next, celebrate the small wins. This is a big one that's really easy to do, and again, it really helps with momentum. recognizing along the way, along this transformational process, this journey, recognizing the small steps you are making is really important. It's easy to get lost in a big undertaking, and not realize what has been accomplished. And if you're always looking at the big vision way out in the future, it can be easy to kind of get lost along the way. So recognize the process you're making, celebrate the small wins. If there's an individual or a couple of individuals who have made a significant contribution, some gift cards, or if it's a group, have lunch brought in, pizza or some bagels in the cafeteria in the morning. Again, doing those really easy, relatively inexpensive, things to recognize progress along the way really goes a long way to building momentum. And it's not just with the team that's on, the change effort, not just the change the change team themselves, but doing these types of recognition with the in a very public way, right? At all hands meetings or what have you. Others who are not involved in the change effort are going to see that, and that's going to motivate them to want to be involved as well. They're going to say, "Hey, look at what so and so did," and getting this recognition from senior leadership. I want to be involved. I want to be a part of that. So again, celebrating those small wins is another key way to continue to build that momentum. And finally, the last practice I'll talk about is communication, and really everything I've presented so far ties back to communication. Having leadership, publicly acknowledging the change effort and supporting it and talking about it. Getting staff and associate engagement and getting their buy-in, having KPIs on display throughout the company regarding the change effort. These are all ways of communicating about the change management activities going on. And so, communication, just as it is key with any project management effort, it's key with change management as well. And be honest about the communication, in your communications. If things aren't going as planned, because not everything is going to go perfectly along the way, be open and honest about that. Talk about those things that didn't go as planned. Talk about what was learned by those experiences or by those changes, and then talk about what adjustments are being made and how you're going to move forward. So again, as we talked about, as I talked about, putting a whiteboard out there on the floor is a way of having publicly displaying that this is a work in progress. Also important is making communication two-directional, two-way. It shouldn't just be the change management team communicating out. It shouldn't just be the leadership team talking about it. There's got to be a pathway for the employees and staff to communicate up and to convey their concerns and to raise questions and so on. There was a company I worked at years ago that had a box in the cafeteria with some cards next to it. Employees could walk in, pick up a card, write down a question, write a comment, drop it in the box, and then at company meetings, these questions and comments would be addressed and talked about. So for employees not comfortable, standing up in the meeting and asking a question or making a comment, this was an anonymous way for employees to communicate. So having two-way communication, again, another really important part of effective change management. Also, communicate about the change effort outside of the company to your external stakeholders. Go to especially your key customers, and talk about, hey, we recognize, that maybe our service wasn't outstanding, or that, our on-time delivery was poor. Here's what's going on within the company to address that, and here's the status, and keep them informed. Again, all of this goes a long way to, building up that the needed momentum for change management and keeping it going. So we presented quite a bit here. So to summarize, change management success really depends on buy-in throughout the organization, leadership support, all the way down to your most junior, least experienced employee. Having everyone bought in is going to help kind of keep things moving along. Using data and metrics to track progress and presenting that information across the company. Doing recognition, celebrating those small wins, rewarding those who have been, have gone the distance and made big contributions. Doing that, again, a big momentum builder, and using consistent, clear, transparent, two-way, open and honest communication is, again, another key practice for successful change management. Transformational change management is really hard. It can take a sustained, effort over a significant period of time, but leveraging these practices that I've presented here can go a long way in helping the effort be successful and helping change stick within the organization. So again, this presentation was provided by the Manufacturers Efficiency Group, which consists of myself, Matt Wizeman, Focal Point Business Leadership Coach, Rich Bello, Senior Partner with Schooley Mitchell, and Gina Tabasso, founder of Barracuda B2B Marketing. If you would like to learn more about today's topic or would like to get some assistance with your own change management efforts, please use the QR codes displayed here to contact us. Love to hear from you and find out how we can help. Also note that we've got some upcoming events planned. So in December, Rich will be talking about cost reduction for shipping expenses. In January, Gina's going to give a presentation on effective marketing for manufacturers. And I'll be back in February talking about having a sound strategic exit strategy for your business. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'll now open things up for questions.
While we're letting people type questions in the comments section, I just have a comment. Everything you talked about, Matt, it just resonated with me with Lean Six Sigma. I mean, everything, the top-down mentality, the buy-in, the champion, getting people not to feel threatened and feel that this is a help to them and it's going to make them more efficient and effective. And even what you talked about current state and goal state and the change to get there. I mean, that's value stream mapping and Lean Six Sigma. So I could really relate to everything that you talked about. I did have a question. So I know you talked about getting buy-in and getting the employees to adopt and change, and change is hard. People resist. And I see even in Lean Six Sigma, a lot of times people fall back into their own patterns, like almost like your New Year's resolution to lose weight or to do whatever, or go to the gym, and you do it for a month and then all of a sudden you're back to where you were. What do you do about employees who continue to struggle or they refuse to change? Like, you sometimes get obstinate people who are like, I'm not doing this. How do you recommend handling that?
Yeah, so I've certainly dealt with that in my experience with change management. It takes a consistent message. Sometimes there's employees that they need to be reminded, as they'll slip back into the kind of the old way of doing things, and they need to be reminded, like, oh, remember, this is how we're going to do things now. And it does help to kind of remove their ability to slip back. So I'll give an example. When I was part of a manufacturing team, a place I used to work, there was a lot of stuff done on spreadsheets and whatnot on the production floor, and those were replaced with some more kind of production control applications, if you will. And I, I thought I'd gone through and kind of gotten rid of all those spreadsheets and hid them away, right? I kind of backed them up somewhere where employees couldn't get to them. But there were a couple of instances where I'd go out on the floor and an employee would be using one of those spreadsheets and say, "Hey, remember, go use the application, right? We're done with spreadsheets, use the production control applications." And that helped. Eventually, employees, "Oh yeah, I forgot it," and they would go, start doing the right thing. However, there were instances where, and it's not always that employees were just outright, putting a stake in the ground and saying, I'm not doing this. Sometimes it was just skill sets. They, regardless of how much training you provided on the new way of doing things, for whatever reason, it wasn't going to work for that employee. If they're being outright, resistant to change, sometimes it takes an upper level member of the organization to say, look, this is how things are being done going forward. And if, you either get on board or you don't. And if you don't, then I'm sorry that, you're going to have to make a decision, or we're going to make a decision. In other cases, employees, in one instance I'm thinking of, we helped an employee find employment more suited to his skill set. For whatever reason, the individual just couldn't make the transition. And we found something more suited to his skills and helped him find other employment. So there's some ideas. Sometimes you got to be firm and say, look, this is how it's being done, and you can get on board, or you can find some other some employment elsewhere.
Thanks, Matt. I know we're running a little over time because we started a couple minutes late with the tech problems, but we had a great question from Doug. He asked, it's kind of similar to what I asked, about getting buy-in on a difficult change, but he specifically mentioned returning to the office as an example. And I know that's been a huge issue lately. Like Sherwin-Williams, for instance, their headquarters is in Cleveland, where I am, and everybody was remote because they were building a new headquarters building. And now they went to hybrid, where you could work from home a couple days and come in a couple days. And then they're transitioning to everybody coming back 5 days a week, and people are not happy. Do you have any thoughts about that type of difficult change?
Oof, yeah, that's a tough one, Doug. I don't know that anybody's come up with a good answer for that one yet. I think companies they're going to have to find a balance, right? I mean, the pandemic kind of opened the Pandora's box, and everybody got to experience working from home and what it was like. And I think highlighting trying to find if companies can find a happy medium, if you will, where they can provide some of the benefits of working from home, but still gaining the benefits of the collaboration that comes with people being, co-located in an office. I think that's going to be the key. And then highlighting the benefits, right? And maybe, maybe there's some psychological benefits for individuals that need to be highlighted. And, there's a downside to being locked away in your home all the time and working. And although it might provide some conveniences, there are some benefits to being with groups of people and getting out of the house and, engaging with others, be it for work or just for a casual water cooler conversation. So I think companies need to highlight that as a means to kind of help bring people back to the office. So hope that helps.
I had one more for you, Matt. You talked in depth about getting the leadership buy-in on change and making sure that they were on board and they were pushing it. But the question comes from the standpoint of, if the change is initiated by someone who is on, say, a level below the C-suite or senior leadership, but they saw the need, they got buy-in from senior leadership to go ahead and institute the change, and they were behind it. But I guess the question comes from, the standpoint of when senior leadership is kind of giving whoever the change agent was that brought the change to the table, they're giving them the leeway and the runway to kind of push it and be the leader on that project. How have you found it to get the buy-in, not to get the buy-in, but to, I guess, communicate to senior leadership how important it is for them to still be vocal in regards to their support of that change, to make sure that it comes to fruition throughout the entire company and it doesn't fall on deaf ears after a while because the change agent isn't necessarily a senior leadership member?
Yeah, it's really, it's key to have leadership be very visible in their support of it. One thing that I found really effective was when you're going to get support from leadership to kick off a big change project, was putting the benefits in terms that are relevant to them, right? So they're looking at the big numbers, the overall company performance, painting a picture of how are those, how are the numbers going to improve? How are we going to how's this going to help us capture more market share, or improve profitability, or improve revenue? Putting it in those terms for senior leaders, I think helps get their buy-in. I mean, I remember I led a big change effort years ago where I did a kind of analysis and a breakdown of the situation. I wrote a report on here's current state, here's where we need to get to. I turned that over to the senior leadership team, and they came back and said, all right, tell us what you need. And I need X, Y, and Z. And they said, all right, you go do it. So that was one way of getting the initial buy-in, but then also saying, okay, look, if you want this to be successful, if you want to get those top line benefits, bottom line benefits, profitability, revenue, whatever it may be, you got to be out there talking about this for me, right? On my behalf. As the change leader, I need you to be visible. And talking about this at company meetings, giving me some time to talk at all hands meetings about what's going on and how this is, impacting the company, and, how we're making progress. So I think those two things, can help them get behind it and be kind of out there promoting it themselves.
That makes sense.
Any other questions? All right. Well, again, I really appreciate everyone joining us today, and join us in December for our next webinar in this series from the Manufacturing Efficiencies Group. Thank you, and everyone have a good day.
And have a happy and blessed Thanksgiving too. We're grateful for all of you, and I hope you have many things to be grateful for.
No doubt.
Yeah. Well said, Gina. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.